President of the Council of Robotics and Automation, Mr. Sharma, dignitaries present in this room, stakeholders, startup leaders. At the outset, I have to compliment the organizers for having conceived this program, which I'm sure is going to propagate the concept and the avenues of startup in India, which still needs to be further publicized and propagated across sections of society, because we have been going around the country and trying to educate the common citizen, particularly the youngsters, about it, but I think much still needs to be done, and I'm sure a council like this, the kind of agenda that they carry, would endeavor in that direction. And as far as the government is concerned, you would recall that it was sometime around 2016 when Prime Minister spoke about Startup India, Stand Up India from the ramparts of the Red Fort. And prior to that, very much was not discussed about startups. The concept was rather new. But the scheme which was unfolded or rolled out that year had a lot of incentives also for those who took to this, which I'm not sure were actually optimally utilized because of lack of awareness. Again, for example, you had a provision of a tax holiday, you had a provision of exit period, that if your heart was not into what you were doing, you could also switch over to something else with all the facility and support in place which was provided to you. So I think, and of course in between this COVID came in, so I think it's high time we pick up from where it could not move on, because startup is now in India going to also create, and it's also already started creating new economies and new markets and new entrepreneurship avenues. Of course, some of the more techno-heavy cities like, so that is also part of startup. You innovate a way of being seen better to the audience. And that's precisely is startup. It's innovation happening in whatever we do. So how do you devise a dice so that you can see the speaker in a full profile? So you don't have to send it to a factory. We have youngsters who can do that. I mean, this time he's done it a little crudely. Next time he will learn to do it more sophisticatedly. But this precisely is the startup practice. And I'm glad he made a demonstration while I was speaking. So having said that, the point I was making was that some of the more techno-savvy cities, of course, like Bengaluru, Hyderabad, picked up faster. But still, some of the smaller metros and even the B-towns are yet to make up. And I think one of the main reasons for that is that in a country like India, which has lived through centuries and centuries of feudal setup, when we think of employment, when we think of livelihood, we think of a salaried job, reporting to somebody in the morning, marking attendance. In some of the offices, even you have to mark attendance while leaving. But what happens in between, nobody knows. If you can report in the office at 9 o'clock, sign your departure register at 5 o'clock, in between, if you roam around, nobody knows where you're doing. But you get your salary on time. If you don't, then you have the unions in place, the employees union. So that kind of concept has haunted us, because that is possibly a legacy of the slavish mindset which got into us, which conditioned us inadvertently. And therefore even today when we talk, I travel almost every week. I'm in 2 or 3 different states. Yesterday I was in Lucknow, again I'll be somewhere else tomorrow. You come across youngsters sitting on protest, asking for jobs, for livelihood. And the back of their mind, and also the back of mind of their parents and the elders, is a salaried government job. But I think what we need to actually propagate is, and also educate both the citizens as well as the elders, is that no country in the world, however much developed it might be, can provide a salaried government job to everybody. But the responsibility of a sincere, committed government is to create avenues of livelihood. And that is precisely the concept that inspires Startup India. Why I'm saying so is because a lot of talk being done about startups these days become a fashionable subject actually, even on television and also in platforms like this. But some of the lesser talked about aspects which are actually now causing some kind of an obstructionist role in movement forward. One of them is that, as I said, getting over this mindset of Sarkari Naukari. And then identify, because we have startup avenues which are much more lucrative. The second is, cautiously or unconsciously, when we talk of startup, we start identifying it with the age group of the girl who was making very sweet announcement. This age group of 30s, it's not so actually. I can personally, I'm in touch with a number of startups who are past 50. So you're not starting up your age, you're starting up a venture. So that is the second concept, because it's not never written, never talked about, never mentioned in the lofty papers and the literature that is available. So startup can start up anytime, and I'm glad in the last few years we have come across some of the more enlightened individuals who quit their jobs in the corporate sector, some of them even civil services, and took to startup. I find such examples also to a great extent in the field of media, who have given up their job with a leading house and then started up on their own. So there is no age bar for startups. So kindly, this is something that we have to get rid of our mind, because we think startup is only meant for an unemployed youth, or who's an educated unemployed, who's graduated and doesn't have it, so he goes for a loan. It's not that. Thirdly, why India is different. Now he was very proudly mentioning that India is going to be the startup hub of the world and the world's, in other words, the world's the favorite destination. But how so? Why so? Because all of us take pride in saying that India is number one, India world power, India Vishwaguru, everything. So it goes off in that. Inhone bhi keh diya, being a Bharatvasi, good Bharatvasi, he said that. So somewhere it doesn't carry conviction sometimes. But the matter of fact is that we live in an evidence-based era, and if we actually talk with facts, indeed we have the potentials which other countries don't have. For example, you were talking of the technical startups, and this conclave also refers to like that. Technical startup conclave. But India has the unique property or characteristic, unlike many other countries, of having avenues other than IT, which are not available in other countries. For example, we have a huge agriculture sector. So unfortunately, the agriculture startup is not sometimes, included in the category of startups. We still think of the old-time Kisan, do bigha zameen, or Mother India, which is not so. It's an agricultural technocrat, agriculture entrepreneurship. And under the Modi government, so much of technology has been rolled out. You have drones irrigating your farm, drones being used for pesticides, you have soil health cards. So a modern day agricultural technocrat, please don't identify modern day technocrat with the age. He could be 60 years. Modern day means today's day. So would have to just sit on his computer and operate. We have technology enough. He doesn't even have to plow the farm or a field as you saw in the movies of 1950s and 60s. So that kind of technology is available in the agriculture sector. India is unique because India has that potential which is not available. If you go to Northeast, you have huge, about 40% of fruit lying waste on the roadside. Huge mindful. In our ministry itself, under CSIR, we have started what is known as Aroma Mission, and which has caught the fancy as the Purple Revolution of India, where we provide support to startups to take up lavender cultivation. And they are making lakhs, many of them, within a few months. And those who have actually tasted the flavor of it are now attracting others also. So that is one area which is unique to India. The other area which remains largely unexplored is that of the dairy sector, the milk sector, which again I think other than the erstwhile Soviet Union, Russia, India has the richest source. But when we talk of startup, we talk of only IT startups. I personally came across because we provided support to the Department of Biotechnology, and out of my own learning and my curiosity, I visited those guys. 3 of them, 2 of them had given up their corporate job in Bengaluru. They were B.Tech. And the third one was known to them, was an MBA also in the same city, also quit the job. And these 2 guys now have about 20 cows, and we provide them all the facility and the medicinal equipment to improve the quality of the milk, to improve the quality of the progeny, the next generation, which adds value to their product. They started making much more than they were making from their salaried job with a corporate house. And seeing these 2, the third friend who was an MBA also quit the job and joined them. So I asked them, what would you do here? And he said, no, I'll help them doing marketing. So I was delighted to find fanciful bottles being created, and they started the robot. So that is the other sector. If Amul could do it in Gujarat, somehow it didn't get fancy. The third sector is what is going to happen in the next few years, which actually will make India the destination, and that is the ocean resources, which we hardly look that way. Whenever in India, when we think of beach, whether it's Juhu or Chapati or Marine, we only think of popcorn or chaat or coconut water. We don't have the vision to look beyond that. We don't, and that's what I was telling the scientists the other day. In Chennai, you have this National Institute of Ocean Technology from where he hails. I was telling them, did you ever realize Australia is a country, Australia is a continent, Australia is an island. But the ocean around is not named as Australia nation. India is the only country which has an ocean named after India. It's called Indian Ocean. And therefore, maybe our forefathers, in the times when the scriptures and Vedas were written, could realize the huge, huge assets lying down there, mining. So we've already started exploring that. Our Samudriyaan is already there in place. Maybe a year or so later, we'll be sending a human being down to 5,000 meter, which is the seabed average. And that is going to be also another startup. And actually that is going to attract startups from all over the world because they don't have that kind of resource available to them. And therefore, when we think of all these avenues, the idea of 5 trillion technology appears to be reachable, accessible, and also easy. And the other sector is the health sector. COVID taught us, but not enough. We are into telemedicine sector in a huge way. In fact, right now also in my own constituency, I am conducting a sponsored program, which of course we have arranged funds for that. In 20 minutes, they do the total body profile. In the next 10 minutes, they connect you to a super specialist doctor. You tied up with 4 hospitals, one in Hyderabad, one in Bengaluru, one in Surat, one in Ahmedabad. And in 50 minutes, the person walks out, getting the best of investigations, the best of management. And as an experiment, we started rotating that mobile clinic in some of the most remote areas where people had not even seen a doctor, because in India today you have a huge mismatch. The other day I was telling some of the medicos that in the cities you overtreat and in the rural area he remains undertreated. So this is going to also address that social issue, and at the same time going to be a huge avenue for startup. And now those who are doing this are not necessarily medicos or doctors. The doctor is only located in the place where you are connecting. The entire rest of the thing is being done by some of those who are well versed in technology and IT. And now we are also into the next generation of it, actually. So I don't know whether we are actually preparing ourselves. I think somebody was mentioning, somebody you called here to speak for 5 minutes. Anuradha. She mentioned a single word, artificial intelligence. I think artificial intelligence is now ready to take over the human intelligence in a big way. So we also already have robotic medicine. When I was talking of telemedicine, I was saying the other day, earlier on, in my times, the idea among the medico circles was to refer a patient to the doctor. Now you will be referring doctor to the patient. Because the patient would come and say, okay sir, मुझे ये सर्जरी करानी है ऑपरेशन, तो वो फला जगह अच्छे डॉक्टर हैं उनके पास भेज दीजिए, मुंबई में, चेन्नई में, बेंगलुरु. It's not so. Now the doctor will be referred to because he would be able to do that, even the surgery. We are not frequently, we already have now experts who are, even in Delhi we have. But we are not largely practicing it because it requires a very precise signaling mechanism, and even in our 4G sometimes, there's a microsecond difference. So if he puts a stitch in Mumbai, it should simultaneously prick the patient lying in Delhi. But when now we are also into 5G and 6G, I think that will also be worked out. So the huge lot of new openings happening which have remained unexplored, and I think it's been appropriately titled India First. Not only that we would have to get used to it, but we have no option but to get used. Like for example, about 10 years back or 15 years back, we would come across a lot of people who would with a lot of disdain and contempt say, ये क्या, ये internet है, ये time waste है. They would contemptuously brush away the idea of using a Twitter or using a Facebook. Now it's become almost a part of your life. For reasons good or bad, that is up to you. Just as you are born, then it's up to you how do you live. But you can't stop your birth happening because you are not in communication with your mother before you born. So it's like that. It's already there in your life. How best to use. So you can't avoid it any longer. You have to get used to it. And that is why in a forum I think it's appropriate to say that we have also started a process of a larger integration among these stakeholders. The challenge I think which the forum like this should also take up is not only promoting or initiating startups, but then to follow them up and find out how best to sustain the startups. Because many of these startups get initiated, they go through the project, then for the reasons of livelihood, they take as civil services, they have become babus. So the entire effort goes waste, both in terms of human resource as well as financial support. So sustainable startups is the other thing that I think needs to be looked into. And for that, we have to involve industry right from the beginning, not industry as a fun or to have a seminar like this, industry as a stakeholder. Next time, Mr. Sharma will have to invest on some of the startups. He has the option to tell us what kind of resource he needs. Suppose he tells us, no, he needs 2 individuals well versed in performing this task. We'll give them the training. We have enough of science training avenues in the government. And he will fund for that so that it pinches him if he goes away. So he'll take them back. So that will ensure a sustained livelihood and it will be a win-win situation. And it will also make a closer association between the two. And therefore I think in the times to come, the areas which are not explored, the age groups which are not been, incidentally we are still pursuing it only among youngsters. It requires a larger degree of awareness and also as a future entrepreneurship. And indeed, I think we have, at the end of having said what I have said in the last few minutes, we can convincingly say that India is going to be world's favorite startup destination in the times to come. So thank you very much.